Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The soft glow of the setting sun bathed the room in warmth, signaling the perfect moment for Ashton's transformation. He stood elegantly in front of the mirror, the navy dress a stunning contrast against his skin, emphasizing his silhouette. With every adjustment of the straps, he felt a surge of empowerment. The silver heels clicked with each step, elevating him both in height and spirit. His gaze softened as he admired the rich auburn wig, carefully styled to perfection. Every strand was meticulously arranged, framing his face gracefully. Ashton's eyes sparkled, reflecting the intricate smoky shadow and the expertly contoured cheekbones. Today marked a milestone, the first time he felt truly comfortable in his own skin as Aaliyah. Stepping back from the mirror, Ashton retrieved his phone from the nearby dresser. He wanted to document this moment, to have a record of his journey. Striking a pose, he snapped several photos, capturing different angles and expressions.
Perfect,
he murmured, scrolling through the images. The navy dress contrasted beautifully with his auburn hair, and the silver heels added just the right touch of glamour. Without a second thought, Ashton tapped the share button, intending to send the photos to his private support group chat. It was a safe space where he could be himself without judgment, a place where others understood the challenges and triumphs of his journey. His finger hovered over the send button for just a moment before pressing it. A sense of relief washed over him as he imagined the supportive comments and encouragement he'd received from his friends in the group. Ashton set his phone down and moved to the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water. The ice clinked against the glass as he took a sip, savoring the coolness against his throat. He felt lighter somehow, as if sharing those photos had lifted a weight from his shoulders. The peaceful moment was shattered by the sudden buzz of his phone. Ashton frowned, wondering who could be messaging him at this hour. He picked up the device, nearly dropping it when he saw the notifications flooding his screen. Messages from coworkers, dozens of them, all reacting to the photos he'd just shared. Ashton's heart plummeted. With trembling fingers, he opened the chat and realized his horrifying mistake. Instead of sending the pictures to his support group, he'd posted them to his work team's group chat. No, he muttered, frantically trying to delete the images. But it was too late. The messages kept coming, each notification a reminder that his secret was out. Ashton sank to the floor, his back against the kitchen cabinets. The cool tile pressed against his legs, exposed by the short hemline of the navy dress. He buried his face in his hands, smudging the carefully applied makeup. How could he face his colleagues now? What would they think? The questions raced through his mind, each one more terrifying than the last. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, Ashton forced himself to look at his phone again. He needed to do damage control, to try and salvage what he could of his professional reputation. Taking a deep breath, he opened the chat once more. To his surprise, the tone of the messages wasn't what he expected. There was confusion, yes, but also concern. "Ashton, are you okay?" read one message from his team lead, Maria. "Those photos were gorgeous. Is everything all right?" Another coworker, Tom, had written. Ashton blinked, reading through the messages again. There was no judgment, no cruel jokes or harsh words. Instead, his colleagues seemed genuinely worried about his well-being. With shaking hands, Ashton typed out a response. "I'm so sorry for the confusion. I meant to send those to a private chat. I have something I need to tell you all. He paused, finger hovering over the send button. This was it. The moment of truth. There was no going back now. Ashton took a deep breath and pressed send. The response was almost immediate. Messages of support and encouragement flooded the chat. We're here for you, Ashton. Whatever you need to say, we're listening. You can trust us. Tears welled up in Ashton's eyes, blurring his vision. He hadn't expected this level of support, especially not from his work colleagues. With newfound courage, he began to type again. The truth is, I've been on a journey of self-discovery for a while now. The person you saw in those photos, that's who I truly am inside. My name is Aaliyah, and I'm transgender. Ashton, no, Aaliyah, hit send before she could second-guess herself. The silence that followed was agonizing. She held her breath, waiting for the responses to come in. When they did, it was like a dam breaking. Messages of love, support, and acceptance poured in from her coworkers. Many expressed their pride in her bravery. Others offered help and resources if she needed them. Aaliyah read each message through tears, overwhelmed by the positive reaction. She'd spent so long hiding this part of herself, terrified of rejection, only to find acceptance in the most unexpected place. As the initial shock wore off, Aaliyah realized she was still sitting on the kitchen floor. She stood up, smoothing out the wrinkles in her navy dress. Looking at her reflection in the microwave door, she saw her smudged makeup and couldn't help but laugh. It was a mess, just like this situation had been, but somehow it had turned out better than she could have imagined. Aaliyah made her way back to the bedroom, kicking off the silver heels as she went. She sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, and began to respond to her coworkers individually. Each message was filled with gratitude for their understanding and support. As she typed, Aaliyah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The secret she'd carried for so long was out in the open, and instead of the rejection she'd feared, she'd found acceptance and love. The next morning, Aaliyah woke up feeling both nervous and excited. It was her first day going to work as her true self. She'd exchanged several more messages with her team lead, Maria, who had assured her that the company was committed to providing a supportive and inclusive environment. Standing in front of her closet, Aaliyah pondered her outfit choice. She wanted to make a good impression without being too flashy. After some deliberation, she settled on a modest navy blue blouse and a knee-length pencil skirt. She paired it with comfortable black flats. No need for the dramatic silver heels today. As she applied her makeup, Aaliyah took care to keep it subtle and professional. A light foundation, a touch of mascara, and a neutral lipstick. She styled her auburn hair into a neat bun, securing it with pins. Before leaving her apartment, Aaliyah took one last look in the mirror. The person staring back at her was finally the person she'd always known herself to be. With a deep breath and a confident smile, she grabbed her purse and headed out the door. The walk to the office felt different today. Aaliyah held her head high, no longer burdened by the weight of her secret. As she approached the building, she saw Maria waiting for her at the entrance. "Good morning, Aaliyah," Maria greeted her with a warm smile. "You look lovely today. Are you ready?" Aaliyah nodded, grateful for the support. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. Together, they walked into the office. Aaliyah could feel eyes on her as they made their way to her desk, but the looks weren't unkind. Many of her co-workers offered encouraging smiles or friendly waves. As Aaliyah settled at her desk, Tom from IT approached.
Hey, Aaliyah,
He said, his voice warm and genuine.
I just wanted to say that I think you're incredibly brave. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask.
Tears pricked at Aaliyah's eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, Tom. That means a lot to me. Throughout the day, more colleagues approached Aaliyah. Some offered words of support. Others asked thoughtful questions about her journey. A few even shared stories of their own LGBTQ+ friends or family members. By lunchtime, Aaliyah felt overwhelmed by the positive responses. She decided to take her break outside, needing a moment to process everything. As she sat on a bench in the nearby park, nibbling on her sandwich, she heard a familiar voice. Mind if I join you? Aaliyah looked up to see Rachel, one of the newer members of their team. She nodded, gesturing to the empty space beside her. Rachel sat down, unwrapping her own lunch. I just wanted to say, she began, her voice soft, that I really admire what you did. Coming out takes a lot of courage. Aaliyah smiled, touched by Rachel's words. Thank you. It wasn't exactly planned, but I'm glad it happened. Everyone has been so supportive. Rachel nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you're not comfortable. Go ahead, Aaliyah replied, curious. How did you know that you were transgender, I mean? Aaliyah took a moment to consider her response. It was a complex question, one she'd grappled with herself for years. It wasn't a sudden realization, she began. It was more like a gradual understanding. For as long as I can remember, I never felt comfortable in my own skin. When I looked in the mirror, the person staring back at me didn't match who I felt I was inside. Rachel listened intently as Aaliyah continued. I spent years trying to ignore those feelings, thinking maybe I was just different or confused, but the discomfort never went away. It wasn't until I started exploring my feminine side, dressing up in private, that things began to make sense. When I saw myself as Aaliyah for the first time, it was like everything clicked into place. I felt whole, authentic, like I was finally seeing my true self. Aaliyah paused, taking a sip of water. It's not an easy journey. There's a lot of self-doubt, fear of rejection, and societal pressure to conform. But living as my authentic self, it's worth all the challenges. Rachel nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. Thank you for sharing that with me, she said softly. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been to keep that part of yourself hidden for so long. They finished their lunch in companionable silence, both lost in thought. As they walked back to the office together, Aaliyah felt a sense of camaraderie with Rachel that she hadn't expected. The afternoon passed quickly, filled with meetings and project deadlines. Aaliyah found herself slipping easily back into her work routine, the only difference being the newfound comfort she felt in her own skin. As the workday came to a close, Maria approached Aaliyah's desk. How are you holding up? She asked, concern evident in her voice. Aaliyah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Better than I could have ever imagined, she replied honestly. Everyone has been so kind and supportive. I can't thank you enough for creating such an inclusive environment. Maria beamed. I'm so glad to hear that. We value diversity and want everyone to feel comfortable being their authentic selves here. She paused, seeming to consider something. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity. Our company is looking to expand its diversity and inclusion initiatives. Would you be interested in being part of a committee to help shape those policies?
Aaliyah's eyes widened in surprise. Really? You think I'd be a good fit for that?
Maria nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. Your perspective would be incredibly valuable. Of course, there's no pressure. Take some time to think about it and let me know. As Maria walked away, Aaliyah felt a surge of excitement. The idea of using her experiences to help create a more inclusive workplace was appealing. It felt like a chance to turn her accidental outing into something positive and meaningful. Packing up her things, Aaliyah couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in just 24 hours. She'd gone from living in fear of discovery to being openly herself, supported by her colleagues, and even offered a chance to make a difference. As she left the office, several co-workers called out goodbyes, using her chosen name naturally, as if they'd been doing it for years. The simple act of hearing, "Goodbye, Aaliyah," filled her with joy. On her way home, Aaliyah decided to treat herself to a small celebration. She stopped at a local bakery, picking up a cupcake with pink frosting. It was a small indulgence, but it felt right to mark this momentous day. Back in her apartment, Aaliyah kicked off her flats and sank into her favorite armchair. She pulled out her phone, opening up the chat with her support group. It was time to share the real story of what had happened with the people who had been there for her from the beginning. As she typed out the events of the past day, Aaliyah felt a mix of emotions wash over her. There was still a twinge of embarrassment at the accidental photo share, but it was overshadowed by the immense gratitude she felt for how things had turned out. Her support group responded with an outpouring of love and excitement. They celebrated her unexpected coming out and the positive response she'd received. Many shared their own coming out stories, reminding Aaliyah that she wasn't alone in this journey. As the evening wore on, Aaliyah found herself reflecting on the whirlwind of events. She thought about the long journey that had led her to this point, the years of confusion, the gradual self-discovery, the fear of rejection that had held her back for so long. She remembered the first time she'd tried on a dress, how right it had felt despite her initial nervousness. She thought about the hours spent practicing makeup, the frustration of mascara smudges and wobbly eyeliner lines. Each small step had been a part of her becoming who she truly was. And now, here she was, out in the open, accepted and supported by her colleagues. It wasn't the way she had planned to come out, but in a strange way, it had been perfect. The accidental share had forced her to confront her fears head-on, and in doing so, she'd found more acceptance than she ever thought possible. As she got ready for bed, Aaliyah caught sight of herself in the mirror. She saw a woman who was finally at peace with herself, who no longer had to hide who she was. The auburn hair that framed her face, the soft curves of her body, everything felt right. Crawling into bed, Aaliyah felt a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. There would undoubtedly be challenges ahead, but she felt prepared to face them. She had a support system both at work and in her personal life, and most importantly, she had the strength that came from being true to herself. As she drifted off to sleep, Aaliyah's last thoughts were of gratitude. Grateful for the accidental share that had set her free, grateful for the colleagues who had embraced her, and grateful for the chance to live authentically as herself. The next morning, Aaliyah woke up feeling refreshed and energized. As she went through her morning routine, she found herself humming a cheerful tune. The nervousness of the previous day had been replaced by a sense of excitement for what lay ahead. She chose a navy blue dress for work, remembering how well it had been received in the accidental photos. As she applied her makeup, she took extra care, wanting to look her best. Her auburn hair was styled into soft waves that framed her face beautifully. On her way to the office, Aaliyah stopped at her favorite coffee shop. The barista, who had known her as Ashton for years, did a double take when she approached the counter. "Good morning," Aaliyah said with a smile. "I'll have my usual, please." The barista blinked, then broke into a warm smile. "Of course. Coming right up. Miss?" Aaliyah's heart swelled at the respectful inquiry. "Aaliyah," she supplied. "Lovely name," the barista responded, scribbling it on the cup. "Your coffee will be ready in a moment, Aaliyah." As she waited for her drink, Aaliyah noticed a few curious glances from other customers. Instead of shrinking away as she might have done before, she held her head high, meeting their gazes with a confident smile. When her name was called, Aaliyah collected her coffee and headed to work, her steps light and purposeful. The small interaction at the coffee shop had reinforced her belief that living authentically was the right choice. At the office, Aaliyah was greeted by friendly faces and warm hellos. She settled into her desk, ready to tackle the day's tasks. As she logged into her computer, she noticed an email from HR inviting her to a meeting later that afternoon. The morning flew by in a flurry of project updates and client calls. Aaliyah found that being her true self allowed her to focus better on her work, free from the constant worry of keeping her secret. At lunchtime, a group of coworkers invited her to join them at a nearby restaurant. As they chatted over sandwiches and salads, Aaliyah marveled at how natural it felt. There were no awkward silences or uncomfortable glances, just friendly conversation among colleagues. After lunch, Aaliyah made her way to the HR meeting. She smoothed down her navy dress, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. "Come in, Aaliyah," called a friendly voice. Inside, she found the HR director, Jessica, along with Maria and the company's diversity and inclusion officer, David. They greeted her warmly and invited her to take a seat. "First of all," Jessica began, "I want to commend you on your bravery in coming out to the team. We're committed to making sure you feel supported and comfortable in the workplace." Aaliyah nodded, touched by the sentiment. "Thank you. Everyone has been incredibly kind and accepting." David leaned forward, his expression earnest. "We've called this meeting because we'd like to discuss how we can better support not just you, but all of our LGBTQ+ employees. Your experience has highlighted some areas where we can improve our policies and practices." For the next hour, they engaged in a thoughtful discussion about inclusivity in the workplace. Aaliyah shared her experiences and insights, feeling empowered to contribute to positive change. By the end of the meeting, they had outlined several initiatives, including updated anti-discrimination policies, gender-neutral restrooms, and diversity training for all employees. Aaliyah had also agreed to be part of a newly formed LGBTQ+ employee resource group. As she left the meeting, Aaliyah felt a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. Not only was she living as her true self, but she was also in a position to help others and make a real difference in her workplace. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of productivity. As Aaliyah packed up to leave for the day, she couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed in just 2 days. From the panic of accidentally sharing those photos to becoming an advocate for inclusivity at work, it was almost too much to comprehend. On her way home, Aaliyah decided to take a detour through the park. The early evening air was crisp, and the setting sun painted the sky in beautiful hues of orange and pink. As she walked, she noticed a young person sitting alone on a bench, looking troubled. Something about their demeanor resonated with Aaliyah. She remembered countless times when she had felt alone and confused, wishing for someone to talk to. After a moment's hesitation, she approached the bench. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Is everything okay?" The person looked up, surprise evident in their eyes. I'm not sure, they admitted. Aaliyah sat down, leaving some space between them. Sometimes it helps to talk about it, she offered. I'm Aaliyah, by the way. Alex, they replied. I'm struggling with some things about myself. Things I'm afraid to tell anyone. Aaliyah nodded understandingly. I know how that feels, she said softly. I recently went through something similar. Alex looked at her curiously. Really? How did you handle it? And so, as the sun set over the park, Aaliyah shared her story. She told Alex about her journey of self-discovery, the accidental coming out, and the unexpected support she'd received. She spoke about the challenges she'd faced and the joy of finally living authentically. As she talked, she could see a glimmer of hope growing in Alex's eyes. When she finished, Alex took a deep breath. Thank you for sharing that with me, they said. It gives me hope that maybe I can figure things out too. Aaliyah smiled warmly. You will, she assured them. It might not be easy, and it might not happen overnight, but you'll get there. And remember, you're not alone. There are people and resources out there to support you. They chatted for a while longer, with Aaliyah providing Alex with information about local support groups and online resources. As they parted ways, Alex thanked her again, this time with a genuine smile. Walking home, Aaliyah felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had taken her own challenging experience and used it to help someone else. It was a beautiful reminder of the positive impact one person could have. Back in her apartment, Aaliyah changed into comfortable loungewear and settled on her couch with a cup of tea. She opened her laptop, inspired to start researching more ways she could get involved in supporting the LGBTQ+ community. As she browsed through various organizations and volunteer opportunities, Aaliyah felt a sense of excitement for the future. She had found not just acceptance, but also a new purpose. Her accidental coming out had set her on a path she never could have imagined, but one that felt incredibly right. Before bed, Aaliyah stood in front of her mirror once more. She looked at her reflection, the auburn hair, the features she had once tried to hide but now embraced. She saw strength, authenticity, and hope. This is just the beginning, she told her reflection, a determined smile on her face. And with that thought, Aaliyah turned off the lights and went to bed, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities tomorrow might bring.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!